Hyunwoo Park pressed his face against the cold metal wall of the research bay and listened to the steady hum of the ship's engines. The sound always helped him think. Around him, dozens of alien artifacts sat in neat rows on white tables, each one tagged and cataloged according to Galactic Council standards. The other researchers called his workspace messy, but Hyunwoo knew where everything was. That broken crystal from the outer rim dig sat next to the metal fragments from the dead world of Kef 7. The smooth stone with strange markings rested beside his coffee cup, which had gone cold hours ago. So-Min Lee walked into the research bay, carrying a datapad, and wearing the kind of frown that meant the ship's systems were acting up again. She had grease on her hands, and her black hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Hyunwoo had known So-Min since their academy days back, on Earth. While other humans went into military service or trade, they both chose research. Most aliens thought humans were too curious for their own good, but So-Min understood why questions mattered more than answers. The sensors picked up something weird, So-Min said, setting her datapad on Hyunwoo's desk. The screen showed wavy lines and numbers that jumped around like they couldn't decide what they wanted to be. Captain Veltar wants to ignore it and keep flying, but I thought you might want to see this first. Hyunwoo looked at the readings and felt his heart speed up. The energy patterns were unlike anything in the databases. They pulsed in a rhythm that seemed almost alive, but the frequency was all wrong for any known life form. "Where is this coming from?" he asked. Already knowing the answer would change everything. "The void sector," So-Min said quietly. She glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. "The forbidden zone, the place where no ship is supposed to go." Every species in the galaxy had stories about the void sector. The Saurians called it the dark between. The arachnoids had prayers to protect travelers from its influence. The crystallines refused to even speak its name out loud. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had marked it as off-limits, and no one questioned why. No one except humans, who had only joined galactic society 50 years ago and still asked too many questions about everything. Hyunwoo pulled up the star charts on his computer. The void sector appeared as a blank space on official maps, but older charts showed something different. Faint marks indicated planets and stations that had been erased from modern records. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the screen. "There used to be civilizations there, lots of them. What happened to them?" So-Min leaned closer to look. Her engineering mind worked differently than his, more practical and careful, but she saw the same mystery he did. "Maybe they all left," she suggested, but her voice sounded doubtful. "Maybe they found somewhere better to live. Or maybe something made them leave," Hyunwoo said. He saved the energy readings to his personal files and started cross-referencing them with every ancient technology database he could access. The computer worked slowly, searching through millions of records for anything that matched the strange patterns. The research bay's main door slid open with a soft hiss. Captain Veltar entered, followed by Dr. Kethamol, the senior scientist. The Saurian captain stood nearly 7 feet tall with green-scaled skin and yellow eyes that missed nothing. Dr. Kethamol belonged to the arachnoid species, with 8 thin arms and a cluster of black eyes arranged around a triangular head. Both aliens looked uncomfortable, which was unusual for a routine visit to the research bay. "Park," Captain Veltar said in his deep, rumbling voice. "I understand you have been examining our sensor data." Hyunwoo nodded. "The energy readings from the void sector are fascinating. I think they might be artificial in origin, possibly technology from a pre-contact civilization." Dr. Kethamol's 8 arms moved in a pattern that Hyunwoo had learned meant extreme agitation. "The void sector is forbidden for good reasons, human. Our ancestors marked it as dangerous long before your species reached the stars. Some boundaries should not be crossed." "But why?" Hyunwoo asked. It was the question that always got him in trouble with alien colleagues. They preferred acceptance to inquiry, following established rules rather than questioning them. "What makes it dangerous? What are you all so afraid of?" Captain Veltar and Dr. Kethamol exchanged a look that spoke of shared knowledge Hyunwoo wasn't allowed to understand. The Saurian captain moved closer to the research table, his clawed hands clasped behind his back. Fear is the wrong word, Park. Respect would be better. Our species learned long ago that some mysteries are better left alone. So-min stepped forward. She had always been better at diplomacy than Hyunwoo, more willing to work within alien protocols when necessary. Captain, with respect, the energy readings suggest active technology. If there's something dangerous in the void sector, shouldn't we understand what it is? Knowledge helps us prepare for threats. Knowledge can also create new threats, Dr. Kethamol said sharply. All 8 of his arms pointed toward Hyunwoo in an accusatory gesture. Humans have been part of galactic society for only 50 years, yet you have already caused more disruption than most species create in centuries. Your curiosity is dangerous. Hyunwoo felt heat rise in his cheeks. Other crew members had stopped their work to listen to the conversation, and he could see the familiar mixture of fear and fascination in their alien faces. Our curiosity has also led to major breakthroughs in medicine, engineering, and xenobiology. The improved faster-than-light drives, the universal language protocols, the new farming techniques that ended the food shortage on Xerion Prime, all of those came from humans asking questions that other species had stopped asking. And how many near disasters came from those same questions, Captain Veltar asked, his yellow eyes fixed on Hyunwoo with uncomfortable intensity. The quantum accident at Research Station 7, the biological contamination incident on Halon 4, the diplomatic crisis with the methane breathers when your people tried to improve their atmospheric processors. So-min placed a gentle hand on Hyunwoo's arm, a warning to be careful. She knew him well enough to recognize the signs of his temper building. Those were learning experiences, she said diplomatically. Mistakes happen when you push boundaries, but that's how progress works. Dr. Kithmol made a sound like steam escaping from a pressure valve. In arachnoid body language, it meant deep frustration. Progress is not always beneficial. Sometimes the wise choice is to leave certain boundaries intact. Hyunwoo looked at the energy readings on his screen, then back at the 2 senior officers. Something in their manner told him they knew more about the void sector than they were willing to admit. "What aren't you telling us?" he asked. "There's something specific you're worried about, isn't there?" "I am ordering you to delete those sensor readings and forget about the void sector," Captain Veltar said firmly. "We will report the energy signatures to the Galactic Council and continue our scheduled survey mission. That is the end of this discussion." The captain and Dr. Kethmol left the research bay, but Hyunwoo could feel the tension they left behind. Other crew members returned to their work, but he noticed how they avoided looking in his direction. So-min waited until the door closed before speaking again. "You're going to ignore that order, aren't you?" she said. It wasn't really a question. Hyunwoo looked at his computer screen, where the energy patterns continued their mysterious dance. Every instinct told him that the readings represented something important, something that could change how they understood the galaxy's history. What if those energy signatures are a distress call? What if someone out there needs help and we're ignoring them because of ancient superstitions? Or what if the superstitions exist for good reasons? So-min said quietly. What if our ancestors learned something terrible about that region and decided the only safe choice was to forget it completely? Hyunwoo saved the energy readings to his personal storage device and began copying relevant database files. His hands moved automatically while his mind raced through possibilities. Then we need to know what they learned. Ignorance isn't protection. So-min, it's just delayed danger. So-min watched him work for several minutes without speaking. Finally, she sat down at the computer terminal next to his and began accessing the ship's historical archives. "If we're going to do this," she said, "we need to be smart about it. No rushing off without proper research and planning." Hyunwoo smiled at his old friend. "I knew you couldn't resist a good mystery either." "I can't resist keeping you from getting yourself killed by being reckless," So-min corrected. "There's a difference." Outside the research bay's small window, stars moved slowly past as the ship continued its journey through safe, well-mapped space. But Hyunwoo's attention was already focused on the dark region ahead, where ancient secrets waited for someone curious enough to ask the right questions. The emergency meeting took place in the ship's main conference room, a circular space designed to accommodate the different physical needs of 12 species. Captain Veltar sat in his elevated chair, while Dr. Kethmol occupied a web-like structure that supported his 8-limbed body. Navigator Zilvan stood in the center of the room, their crystalline form catching and reflecting the overhead lights in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Hyunwoo and So-min entered together, both carrying datapads loaded with their unauthorized research from the past 3 days. They had spent every off-duty hour digging through historical records, cross-referencing energy patterns, and building a case for why the void sector deserved investigation rather than avoidance. Hyunwoo felt confident in their findings, but he could sense the hostility in the room before anyone spoke. "Please sit," Captain Veltar said, indicating 2 human-sized chairs near the back of the room. His tone carried the kind of careful politeness that meant serious trouble was coming. Dr. Kethmol's cluster of black eyes focused on the 2 humans with obvious disapproval. "We have called this meeting to discuss the human problem," he said without any attempt at diplomatic softening. "Your species has been aboard this vessel for 6 months, and in that time, you have questioned every protocol, challenged every established procedure, and now you are actively researching forbidden territories despite direct orders to stop." So-min looked uncomfortable, but Hyunwoo leaned forward in his chair. "Questioning protocols isn't a problem, it's how we improve them. Half the procedures on this ship were developed centuries ago by species who didn't have access to current technology or knowledge. Those procedures exist because they work," Captain Veltar said firmly. "They keep crews safe and missions successful. Your constant questioning creates uncertainty and undermines chain of command." Navigator Zilvan's crystalline body shifted color from blue to a warning orange. When crystallines spoke, their voices came from somewhere inside their translucent forms, creating an eerie echo effect. "The humans raise an interesting point about technological advancement," they said slowly. "Their species has contributed significant improvements to ship systems in recent years." Dr. Kethmol's arms waved in agitation. "Improvements that came with significant risks. The quantum drive modifications nearly created a black hole. The atmospheric recycling changes caused 3 weeks of bad air on the lower decks. Every human innovation seems to create 2 new problems for each one it solves." Hyunwoo pulled up files on his datapad and projected them onto the room's main screen. Those were temporary setbacks during implementation phases. The final results improved efficiency by 30% and reduced power consumption by 15%. Progress requires accepting some initial risk. "That is exactly the attitude we are concerned about," Captain Veltar said, his yellow eyes fixed on Hyunwoo with uncomfortable intensity. "Humans seem incapable of accepting that some risks are too great to justify any potential benefit." Someone finally spoke up, her voice carefully controlled. "Captain, may I ask what specific risks you're referring to? The official records about the void sector contain very little actual information, just warnings and restrictions without explanations." The alien officers exchanged looks that spoke of shared knowledge. Dr. Kethmol's 8 arms folded in a defensive pattern, while Navigator Sylvan's color shifted to deep red. Captain Veltar remained silent for long moments, clearly wrestling with how much to reveal. "Every species in the galaxy has ancestral memories of the void sector," Dr. Kethmol finally said. "Stories passed down through generations that speak. Of great disaster and loss, the details vary between cultures, but the warnings remain consistent across all civilizations." "Ancestral memories?" Hyunwoo repeated. "You mean folklore and mythology? Stories that change every time they're told, becoming more dramatic and less accurate with each generation." Navigator Sylvan's crystalline form pulsed with angry red light. "You dismiss our cultural heritage as mere storytelling, but these memories served as survival guidance for millions of years before humans reached the stars." "I'm not dismissing anything," Hyunwoo said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'm suggesting that we should verify ancient stories with modern investigation methods. What if your ancestral memories are warnings about a problem that still exists and needs our attention?" Captain Veltar stood up from his chair, using his full height to dominate the room. "This is precisely what we mean about human dangerous. Curiosity. You cannot accept that some knowledge is better left undiscovered, that some boundaries exist for the protection of all species. So-Min activated her datapad and projected new information onto the main screen. The display showed energy pattern analyses, historical star charts, and comparative data from known archaeological sites. "We've been researching the void sector readings for 3 days," she said. "The energy signatures match theoretical models for pre-contact technology, possibly from civilizations that existed before any current galactic species developed space travel." Dr. Kethamul made the steam hissing sound that indicated extreme frustration. "And what do you intend to do with this information?" "We think the ship should investigate," Yunwu said simply. "If there's active technology in the void sector, it represents either a potential threat that needs assessment or a discovery that could benefit all galactic civilizations." "Absolutely not," Captain Veltar said immediately. "I will not risk this ship and crew based on human curiosity about forbidden territories." Navigator Zilvan moved closer to the projected data, their crystalline form studying the energy patterns with obvious interest. "The readings are unusual," they admitted reluctantly. "They show characteristics I have not seen in any known technology database, which is exactly why we should stay away from them," Dr. Kethamul insisted. "Unknown technology from forbidden space represents unknown dangers." Hyunwoo stood up and walked to the main display. "Look at these patterns," he said, pointing to specific sections of the energy readings. "They're not random. They show signs of purposeful design, mathematical precision, and what appears to be some kind of communication protocol." "Communication," So-Min added, "which suggests intelligence. If there's someone or something trying to communicate from the void sector, don't we have a responsibility to respond?" Captain Veltar's scaled hands clenched into fists. "We have a responsibility to protect the ship and crew from unnecessary dangers. The Galactic Council declared the void sector forbidden for excellent reasons." "What reasons?" Hyunwoo asked for what felt like the 100th time. "The official records don't explain why it's dangerous, just that it is dangerous. How can we make informed decisions based on incomplete information?" Dr. Kethamul's 8 arms moved in complex patterns that indicated deep thought. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "it is time you learned why humans make other species nervous." The arachnoid scientist activated his own datapad and projected historical information onto the screen. The display showed comparative data about different species approaches to discovery and exploration. Saurians took centuries to fully investigate new territories before settlement. Arachnoids required unanimous consensus from all colony members before making major changes. Crystallines analyzed every possible outcome before taking action. Every successful galactic species developed caution as a primary survival trait, Dr. Kethamul explained. "We learned to avoid unnecessary risks, to preserve what worked rather than constantly seeking change. These behavioral patterns kept our civilizations alive through cosmic disasters, resource shortages, and contact with hostile forces." Navigator Zilvan's form shifted to a calm blue color. "Humans represent a completely different evolutionary path. Your species reached the stars not through careful planning but through curiosity-driven exploration. You take risks that other species would consider suicidal. And it worked," So-Min said quietly. "Humanity went from first flight to interstellar travel in less than 2 centuries. Most species require millennia for similar technological advancement." "Yes," Captain Veltar said grimly. "Which is why some council members believe humans should be restricted from certain types of research and exploration. Your success rate is impressive, but so is your potential for creating galaxy-wide disasters." Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying there are discussions about limiting human participation in galactic society?" Dr. Kethamul's arms folded in. "Confirmation. Regular discussions. The methane breathers proposed that humans should require supervision for any research involving unknown technologies. The deep swimmers suggested that human crews should be limited to well-explored regions of space." "That's discrimination," So-Min said, her engineering practicality replaced by obvious anger. You're talking about restricting an entire species based on behavioral stereotypes. Navigator Zilvin's crystal form pulsed thoughtfully. It is risk management based on observed patterns. Humans have been involved in more first contact incidents, technological accidents, and diplomatic crises in 50 years than most species experience in centuries. We've also made more scientific breakthroughs and solved more galactic problems than any other species in the same time period, Hyunwoo countered. Progress requires accepting some risk of failure. The decision to enter the void sector came after 2 days of heated debate among the senior staff. Captain Veltar made the final choice during the morning shift change, announcing over the ship's communication system that they would conduct a limited reconnaissance mission. The alien crew members received the news with obvious anxiety, while the human crew showed the kind of excited energy that made their non-human colleagues even more nervous. Hyunwoo stood in the research bay, watching the main display as normal space gave way to something stranger. The stars outside began to look different, older somehow, with colors that seemed slightly wrong according to standard stellar classifications. The ship's sensors detected energy fields that interfered with normal scanning procedures, creating static patterns that danced across every monitor. So-min worked at the engineering station, monitoring ship systems as they crossed into the forbidden zone. Hull integrity is stable, she reported to Captain Veltar over the intercom. But we're getting weird readings from the navigation array. It's like something is trying to pull us off course. Dr. Kethamol entered the research bay, his 8 arms moving in nervous patterns. The arachnoid scientist had opposed the mission from the beginning, but his scientific curiosity was finally overcoming his species' natural caution. The crew is experiencing unusual psychological effects, he reported. Several team members are reporting dreams about places they have never seen, memories that do not belong to them. Hyunwoo looked up from his analysis station. What kind of memories? Ancient cities with impossible architecture, beings that move through space without ships, technologies that operate without visible power sources. Dr. Kethamol's cluster of black eyes focused on the main display. The strangest part is that different species are reporting similar visions, despite having completely different brain structures and cultural backgrounds. The ship's proximity alarms began to sound, indicating they had encountered something large enough to register on sensors. Captain Veltar's voice came through the intercom with obvious tension. All crew, to stations. We have visual contact with an artificial structure. Hyunwoo and So-min rushed to the main viewing deck, joining dozens of other crew members who stared out at something that challenged their understanding of engineering and physics. The structure hanging in space before them was perfectly spherical, nearly the size of Earth's moon, with a surface that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Patterns moved across its exterior in waves, creating geometric designs that were beautiful and disturbing at the same time. Tae-ho Choi stood near, the viewing windows, his hand resting on his security equipment. The human security chief had the kind of calm alertness that came from military training, but even he looked unsettled by what they were seeing. That thing is definitely artificial, he said quietly. But it doesn't match any known architectural styles in the databases. Navigator Zilvin approached the viewing area, their crystalline form pulsing with nervous yellow light. My people have legends about structures like this, they said in their echoing voice. Spheres that contain entire worlds, built by beings who shape space itself like other species shape matter. Sujin Kim worked at the communications station, trying to establish contact protocols with the mysterious structure. The human communications officer adjusted her equipment settings, searching for any kind of signal or response from the sphere. I'm detecting communication attempts, she announced. Multiple frequencies, some using mathematical patterns that suggest intelligence. Doctor, Kethamol's arms waved in agitation as he studied the sensor readings. The structure is scanning us, he said. Advanced sensors are examining every part of this ship, analyzing our technology, our crew, even our biological signatures. Captain Veltar entered the viewing deck, his yellow eyes fixed on the massive sphere. The Saurian captain's natural composure was showing cracks as he struggled to maintain command authority in a situation that challenged everything he understood about space exploration. Recommendations, he asked his senior staff. We should leave immediately, Dr. Kethmel said without hesitation. This structure represents technology far beyond anything in known space. Contact could be extremely dangerous. We should try to communicate, Hyunwoo said, knowing his suggestion would cause arguments. If they're scanning us anyway, they already know we're here. Running away won't make us safer. It will just mean we miss the chance to learn something important. Taeho stepped closer to the captain. From a security standpoint, we're already compromised. If that thing wanted to destroy us, it could have done so the moment we arrived. The fact that it's scanning rather than attacking suggests curiosity rather than hostility. So-min looked up from her engineering displays. The structure is affecting our ship systems in ways I don't understand. Engine efficiency is actually improving, power consumption is dropping, and the life support systems are running better than they have in months. Navigator Sylvan's crystalline form shifted to a deep blue color that indicated serious thought. Perhaps the structure is not hostile, but that does not mean it is safe. Advanced technology can be dangerous even when used with good intentions. Captain Veltar made his decision with the kind of firm authority that had kept his crew alive. Through dozens of dangerous missions, we will attempt limited communication. Kim, establish a basic mathematical signal to indicate intelligence. Choi, maintain security protocols. Park, Lee, monitor all sensor data for anything that might help us understand what we're dealing with. Sujin began transmitting simple mathematical sequences toward the structure, while everyone watched the displays for any response. The sphere's surface patterns changed, flowing into new configurations that seemed to acknowledge their communication attempts. After several minutes, a response came back, not as radio signals, but as direct data transmission into the ship's computer systems. It's in the computer, So-min said, her voice tight with concern. The structure just downloaded something directly into our database without going through any of our security protocols. Hyunwoo rushed to his analysis station and began examining the incoming data. What he found made his heart race with excitement and terror at the same time. It's a language primer, he announced. Complete vocabulary, grammar structures, and cultural context information for what appears to be the most advanced civilization ever encountered. Dr. Kethmel's 8 arms folded into a defensive posture. How do we know this information is accurate? How do we know it is not some kind of trap or deception? We don't, Captain Veltar said grimly. But we are already committed to this course of action. Kim, use the language data to establish more complex communication. Sujin worked with the translated information, building more sophisticated messages that expressed peaceful intentions and curiosity about the structure's origin and purpose. The response came quickly, this time as holographic projections that appeared throughout the ship simultaneously. The images showed star systems, civilizations, and technologies that existed millions of years before any current galactic species had evolved. A voice began speaking in every language simultaneously, somehow addressing each crew member in their native tongue while maintaining perfect clarity and meaning. Welcome, young travelers. I am the curator, guardian of knowledge from the first civilization. I have been waiting a very long time for visitors with the proper qualities to inherit what was left behind. Hyunwoo felt chills run down his spine as he realized they were communicating with an artificial intelligence that had existed since before recorded galactic history. What happened to the first civilization, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. They transcended physical existence millions of years ago, the curator replied. But before they departed, they created me to test emerging species and determine which ones might be ready to inherit their legacy of knowledge and responsibility. Captain Veltar stepped forward, his military training helping him maintain composure, despite the impossible situation. What kind of test? A test of wisdom, courage, and adaptability, the curator said. The holographic displays showed images of various galactic species approaching the structure throughout history. Every spacefaring civilization eventually discovers this place. Most flee immediately when they encounter technology beyond their understanding. Dr. Kethamel's arms waved nervously. Perhaps fleeing is the wise choice. Perhaps some knowledge is too dangerous for young civilizations to possess. Perhaps, the curator agreed. But occasionally a species arrives that combines wisdom with curiosity, caution with courage, individual initiative with collective responsibility. Such species are rare, but they represent the best hope for galactic advancement. So-Min looked around at her mixed-species crewmates, understanding beginning to dawn in her eyes. You're not just testing individual species, are you? You're testing how different species work together. Very perceptive, the curator said, and the holographic displays shifted to show images of the ship's crew working together on various projects. Isolated species tend toward stagnation. Cooperative civilizations create possibilities that no single culture could achieve alone. Yunwu realized they were being evaluated not just as representatives of their individual species. The test began without warning or ceremony. One moment the crew was discussing the curator's offer, the next moment reality shifted around them like water disturbed by a stone. The ship's familiar corridors became something else entirely, a maze of interconnected chambers that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Each room contained puzzles that challenged not just intelligence, but the ability to think beyond established patterns. Yunwu found himself in a chamber filled with floating geometric shapes that rearranged themselves according to rules he couldn't immediately understand. The shapes were beautiful, made of what looked like crystallized light, but every time he thought he had discovered the pattern, the configuration changed completely. He could hear So-Min's voice from somewhere nearby, describing similar challenges in her own testing chamber. The key is not to solve each puzzle individually, So-Min called out, her engineer's mind already working on the larger problem. These challenges are connected somehow. We need to share information and work together. Dr. Kethmol's voice came from another direction, filled with the kind of scientific excitement that overcame his species' natural caution when presented with truly interesting mysteries. The puzzles adapt to our thinking patterns, he announced. They become more complex as we understand them better, like they're designed to push our capabilities to their absolute limits. Captain Veltar's military training served him well in the testing environment. His voice carried clearly through the strange chambers as he organized their responses. Report your findings. We treat this like any other mission that requires coordination and teamwork. Navigator Zilvan's crystalline form had been separated into multiple chambers, but their voice maintained its usual logical precision. I am detecting mathematical relationships between the puzzle solutions. Each completed challenge appears to unlock additional information about the overall test structure. Taeho's security training proved surprisingly useful for the abstract challenges. His voice came through with calm confidence as he described his approach to problems that had no obvious military applications. These puzzles require the kind of flexible thinking we use in tactical situations. You have to be willing to abandon strategies that aren't working and try completely different approaches. Sujin worked on communication puzzles that involved translating concepts between different types of consciousness. Her voice showed the strain of trying to think like beings whose mental processes operated on entirely different principles. Some of these problems don't have solutions that make sense to any single species, she reported. They require perspectives from multiple types of intelligence working together. Yunwu realized that the curator was not just testing their problem-solving abilities, but evaluating how well different species could combine their unique strengths. The Saurians brought military discipline and strategic thinking. The arachnoids contributed scientific methodology and collective wisdom. The crystallines offered pure logical analysis and mathematical precision. Humans provided intuitive leaps and creative approaches that ignored conventional limitations. We're not competing against each other, Yunwu called out as understanding dawned. We're being tested as a cooperative unit. The puzzles are designed so that no single species could solve them alone. The curator's voice filled all the chambers simultaneously, speaking in that strange way that addressed each species in their own language while maintaining perfect clarity. Correct, human Hyunwoo. The first civilization learned that advancement requires diversity of thought, cooperation between different approaches to understanding reality. So-Min's engineering background helped her recognize the pattern first. The testing chambers are reconfiguring based on our collaborative efforts. Every time we share information and build on each other's solutions, new possibilities open up. Doctor, Kethmol made an excited chittering sound that meant discovery in arachnoid body language. I have been analyzing the puzzle structures, and they appear to be more than mere tests. They are teaching tools, designed to expand our thinking capabilities while evaluating our readiness for advanced knowledge. The challenges grew more complex as the crew worked together, requiring not just intellectual cooperation, but emotional trust and cultural understanding. Puzzles appeared that could only be solved by beings willing to set aside their species' natural behavioral patterns and adopt completely alien approaches to problem-solving. Captain Veltar faced a challenge that required abandoning military hierarchy and accepting guidance from crew members junior to his rank. His Saurian instincts fought against following orders from subordinates, but the puzzle demanded that kind of flexibility. "This is harder than combat," he admitted over the communication system. "At least in battle, the rules are clear." Navigator Sylvan encountered problems that required emotional intuition rather than logical analysis, forcing their crystalline consciousness to grapple with concepts their species rarely considered. "How do humans make decisions based on feelings rather than data?" they asked with obvious confusion. "You don't abandon logic," Soman explained patiently. "You use feelings as additional data points. Emotions often contain information that pure analysis misses." Tejo found himself working on puzzles that required complete pacifism and trust, directly contradicting his security training. The challenges forced him to find solutions through cooperation and communication rather than force or defensive measures. "These tests are designed to make us grow beyond our species' limitations," he realized. Sujin faced communication challenges that required her to convey concepts that had no words in any known language. She had to develop entirely new forms of expression that could bridge the gaps between radically different types of consciousness. "I'm starting to understand why the first civilization had to leave physical existence," she said. "Some ideas are too big for any single form of intelligence to contain." The most difficult challenges appeared when the crew was forced to question their most fundamental assumptions about reality, morality, and existence itself. These puzzles had no clear right answers, instead requiring the kind of wisdom that came from accepting uncertainty while still making necessary decisions. Hyunwoo found himself in a chamber where he had to choose between saving his own species and protecting alien civilizations he had never met. The scenario felt completely real, with consequences that would affect billions of lives regardless of his choice. "How do we make moral decisions when every option causes suffering?" he asked the curator. "That is perhaps the most important question any advanced civilization must answer," the curator replied. "The first civilization struggled with the same dilemmas before they found their solution." Dr. Kethamol faced puzzles that required him to challenge arachnoid collective wisdom and make individual decisions that went against millions of years of cultural evolution. His 8 arms shook with the strain of thinking like a single being rather than part of a larger group consciousness. "This is asking me to become something my species has never been," he said. "Growth often requires becoming more than what we started as," Captain Veltar said, his own voice showing the strain of leadership challenges that had no clear military solutions. As the testing continued, the crew began to notice changes in themselves and each other. Hyunwoo found his usually impulsive curiosity tempered by newfound patience and consideration for consequences. Soman discovered that her practical engineering approach could be enhanced by intuitive leaps that had no logical foundation. Dr. Kethamol learned to think as an individual while still drawing on collective wisdom. The alien crew members began to understand why humans were simultaneously admired and feared by other galactic species. Human curiosity, when properly balanced with wisdom and cooperation, could indeed lead to breakthrough discoveries and solutions. But that same curiosity, unchecked by caution and responsibility, could create disasters that affected entire civilizations. "The test is changing us," Navigator Zilvan observed, their crystalline form pulsing with colors that had no names in any language. "We are becoming something new, something that combines the best qualities of our individual species." "That may be the point," Sujin said quietly. "Maybe the first civilization didn't just leave behind knowledge and technology. Maybe they left behind a process for helping younger species evolve into something capable of handling advanced responsibilities. The curator's presence grew stronger as the crew worked through increasingly complex challenges. "You are approaching the final phase of evaluation," the ancient intelligence announced. "Soon you must make a choice that will determine not just your own futures, but the future of galactic civilization itself." Hyunwoo felt a mixture of excitement and terror as he realized they were about to face the ultimate test of their readiness for knowledge that could transform or destroy entire worlds. "What happens if we make the wrong choice?" "There is no wrong choice," the curator replied. "Only choices that reveal what kind of beings you have become through this process of growth and cooperation." The testing chambers began to shift again, preparing for the final challenge that would determine whether this mixed crew of young species was ready to inherit the legacy of the galaxy's first and greatest civilization. The final testing chamber materialized around them like a dream becoming solid reality. Unlike the previous puzzle rooms, this space felt ancient and sacred, filled with floating displays that showed the entire history of galactic civilization. From its earliest beginnings to possible futures that stretched beyond imagination, the crew found themselves standing together on a platform that seemed to exist at the center of everything, surrounded by knowledge that could reshape the universe. The curator's presence filled the chamber, no longer just a voice, but a visible manifestation of intelligence so advanced that looking at it directly caused strange sensations in their minds. "You have performed well in the individual tests," the ancient being said, addressing each crew member simultaneously in their native languages. "Now comes the true measure of your readiness." Hyunwoo looked around at his shipmates, seeing how the testing process had changed them all. Dr. Kethamol stood straighter, his 8 arms moving with newfound confidence in individual thought. Captain Veltar's military bearing had softened into something more flexible and collaborative. Navigator Zilvan's crystalline form pulsed with colors that suggested emotional awareness, previously unknown to their species. "What is the final test?" Somin asked, her engineer's practicality enhanced by the intuitive insights she had developed during the challenges. The curator gestured toward the floating displays, which began showing detailed information about technologies that could solve every major problem facing galactic civilization, energy sources that could power entire star systems without environmental damage, medical knowledge that could extend life indefinitely while maintaining health and vitality, transportation methods that could connect any 2 points in the galaxy instantaneously, communication systems that would allow different species to share thoughts and experiences directly. "The knowledge of the first civilization," the curator explained. "Everything they learned during millions of years of advancement, preserved, here for species ready to use it responsibly." Taeho studied the technological displays with his security officer's eye for potential problems. This level of advancement could eliminate resource conflicts, territorial disputes, and most of the causes of war between species, he said. But it could also create new types of problems we haven't thought of yet. Sujin worked with the communication technologies, her excitement growing as she realized the possibilities. "Universal translation that works at the level of thought rather than language. We could finally understand how different species actually think, not just what they choose to say." Dr. Kethmol examined the scientific information with the kind of careful analysis his species was famous for. "The medical technologies alone could transform every civilization in the galaxy," he said. "No more genetic diseases, no more aging-related suffering, no more early death from accidents or violence." Navigator Zilvan studied the transportation and energy systems, their crystalline mind processing mathematical relationships that lesser intelligences couldn't comprehend. The environmental applications could restore damaged planets, terraform dead worlds, and create sustainable colonies in previously uninhabitable systems. Captain Veltar looked at the strategic implications of such advanced knowledge. This technology would shift the balance of power dramatically, he observed. Species with access to first civilization knowledge would have overwhelming advantages over those without it. "Which brings us to your choice," the curator said. The displays shifted to show different possible futures based on how the crew decided to use what they had learned. You can accept this knowledge for humanity alone, making your species the dominant force in galactic civilization. You can share it equally among all current species, creating rapid advancement but also potential chaos as everyone adapts to new capabilities. Or you can choose a third option that the first civilization discovered only near the end of their physical existence. Hyunwoo felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders as he realized they were making decisions that would affect billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. What is the third option? The curator's form shifted, becoming somehow both more alien and more comprehensible at the same time. Gradual revelation through cooperative discovery. Rather than simply transferring knowledge, we establish a system where different species must work together to unlock each new capability. Individual advancement becomes impossible, but collective growth accelerates beyond anything previously achieved. So Min immediately grasped the engineering elegance of such an approach. Like a complex machine where each species contributes essential components, but no single group can dominate the others because everyone's expertise is necessary. Precisely, the curator confirmed. The first civilization learned that knowledge without wisdom leads to destruction, but wisdom without knowledge leads to stagnation. The solution is creating conditions where wisdom and knowledge must develop together through cooperative effort. Dr. Kethmol's scientific mind appreciated the careful balance such a system would require. This would mean abandoning the traditional approach of species competing for dominance and replacing it with mandatory interdependence. It would also mean accepting that some discoveries might come slowly, Captain Veltar pointed out. Military applications of advanced technology would be particularly restricted if multiple species had to agree on their development. Tae-ho nodded thoughtfully, which might be exactly the kind of restriction that prevents advanced knowledge from being used for destructive purposes. Navigator Sylvan's crystalline form pulsed with deep blue contemplation. The mathematical model suggests this approach would create exponential growth in collective capabilities while minimizing risks of any single civilization becoming dangerously powerful. Su Jin looked around at her diverse crewmates, seeing how the testing process had taught them to value each other's unique perspectives. "We've already proven this kind of cooperation can work," she said. "None of us could have passed these tests alone, but together we accomplished things none of our species had ever achieved individually." Hyunwoo felt his human curiosity pulling him toward the immediate acquisition of all available knowledge, but his experience working with alien colleagues had taught him the value of patience and collaboration. "The third option requires the utmost trust," he said slowly. "We would be betting the future of galactic civilization on the hope that different species can continue working together, even when they have access to incredible power." "Trust," the curator agreed, "but also verification. The system would include safeguards to prevent any group from hoarding knowledge or using it to harm others. The first civilization learned that trust works best when it is supported by transparent structures that make betrayal both visible and self-defeating." Captain Veltar made his decision with the kind of firm authority that had kept his crew alive through dozens of dangerous missions. "We choose the third option," he announced. "Cooperative discovery with gradual revelation and built-in safeguards." "Dr." Kethmol's arms moved in patterns of agreement. "The scientific benefits of this approach outweigh the risks of slower individual advancement." Navigator Sylvan's form pulsed with calm certainty. "The mathematical models support this choice as optimal for long-term galactic stability and growth." Tae-ho nodded his approval. "From a security standpoint, distributed knowledge is safer than concentrated power." Sujin smiled at the elegant solution they had chosen. "And from a communication perspective, this system will force different species to develop better understanding of each other's thinking processes." So-min looked at the technological displays with engineer satisfaction at a well-designed system. "It's like building a galactic machine where every species is an essential component, working together to create something none of them could achieve alone." Hyunwoo took a deep breath and spoke for all of them. "We accept the responsibility of implementing cooperative discovery throughout galactic civilization." The curator's ancient presence seemed to radiate approval and something that might have been relief. "You have chosen wisdom over power," cooperation over dominance, and gradual growth over immediate gratification. The first civilization would be proud to see their legacy inherited by beings capable of such mature judgment. The chamber began to change around them, transforming from a testing ground into something that looked like a combination of library, laboratory, and communication center. This structure will become the focal point for cooperative discovery, the curator explained. Representatives from all galactic species will work here together, unlocking new knowledge through collaborative effort, while safeguards ensure no single civilization can abuse what they learn. As the crew prepared to return to their ship and begin the process of establishing this new model of galactic cooperation, Hyun-woo realized that their greatest discovery had not been ancient technology or forgotten wisdom. They had learned that the most dangerous tool in space, human curiosity, became the most valuable tool in the universe when properly balanced with wisdom, cooperation, and respect for the perspectives of others. The stars outside the great sphere looked different now,